In this video, I want to show you how easy it is to create your own custom blocks for PageGrid. We are starting by placing a new PHP file in the site templates blocks folder. I already created a template file. I called it basic-block.php. I'm going to open it with my code editor. Right now, this file is completely empty. So let's add some markup here and save. After you created this template file, go back to your module settings and reload your browser. And now you should see your template file and you can select it under the field settings and click the submit button. Now PageGrid already automatically created a template for you with the same name as your template file. Now we are ready to create our first page with PageGrid. Go to Tree, Add New to create a new page and select the PageGrid page template that is created when you install the PageGrid module. Of course, you can also create your own template, but for now we stick with the default template. Once this page is created, we can add blocks to this page. Right now we only have one block, and that is the block that we just created. And when we add it to the page, you can see that it works and it prints our Hello World headline. If you want to output data from the CMS, you have to add fields to your block template first. Go to Setup Templates and select your template. Click on Create a new field. We are going to add a text field here. And let's also add an image field. Optionally, you can also give your block a label, which will appear when someone adds a block to a page. And you can give your block an icon if you want. This is completely optional, but it makes it easier for a user to identify your block. Now that we added the fields to our block template, we can go back to our template file. To output the values from our fields, we can use ProcessWire's page object. If you ever use ProcessWire, you already know how this works. Here we are outputting the data from our text field that's called myText, and we are outputting the value from the image field, and we put it in a check, so we only show the image when the user actually added an image. To make the image responsive, you can add a width 100% to the image element. Next, we save the page and go back to the ProcessWire admin. And here we can now click the pen icon of our block and see the fields that we added earlier. Let's put some text here and add an image. And when you click save, you see that the block automatically updates with our content. Another way to edit content in PageGrid is using the inline editor, which allows you to directly edit the content on the page. If you want to enable the inline editor for your text fields, all you have to do is select them in the PageGrid settings. You can also enable PageGrid's inline file uploader by putting a specific tag on your template file. Note that currently it's only working for single file fields. If we save and go back to our page, we can see that the inline editing of the text field already works. And now let's also enable the file uploader for our image. To do that, we go back to our template file and add the PG edit tag around our image. And we provide the page ID as a page attribute, and we add the field name as a field attribute. To test if everything is working, we go back to ProcessWire and reload the page. And now we should be able to use the inline uploader to upload an image. By default, PageGrid wraps the content of your block template file inside a div element, but it's very easy to control how this wrapper element is rendered. All you have to do is put the attribute PGWrapper to the root element of your block, and it just behaves like a normal HTML element. Here we are changing the div to an article element. We could also add classes or attributes to this, But for now, let's keep it simple. If we go back to the front end of our website and reload the page, we can see that the element now changed to article. Let's add some styling to our blog to make it look a bit nicer. One way to do this is to create a CSS file with the same name as your blog template file. This will tell PageGrid to load the CSS file automatically whenever your blog template gets rendered, which makes sure that PageGrid is only loading the CSS that is needed to render a specific page, and it also helps you to keep your CSS code separated for each block. Of course, you can also load your CSS in your main template file if you prefer. When we refresh the page, we can see that our blog now looks a bit nicer. As a default, PageGrid renders your blocks inside a 12-column grid, which gives editors a lot of flexibility to lay out a page, but you can easily customize this through CSS. A good place to override PageGrid's default CSS is on the PageGrid module settings, where you find a CSS code field and some CSS code examples that you can copy and paste. For more advanced customization, it's probably best to include a main CSS file on your main PHP template, but for this example, let's do it through the CSS field. Here we are changing PageGrid's main wrapper to a 3-column grid, and we are forcing all the items to be positioned automatically on the grid and that they only occupy 1 column. Next, let's save these settings. And now if we go to our page, we see that the items are now displayed in a 3-column grid. And if you add more items, they are positioned automatically on the grid. To make the blocks stack vertically, you can put display block on the main wrapper. This will also make sure that the user can only sort items vertically. PageGrid items can be nested, and this can be used for layout purposes or to group items together. Another example might be a slider or gallery block that the user can add items to, or basically any repeatable content that you might want to put on your blog. Let's start by creating a new template file for our group. To tell PageGrid that we allow nesting for this block, we put the attribute PGChildrenTrue to our wrapper element. In this example, we use a section element, but you can also use a div or another element if you like. Next, we loop through the children and use the function PageGridRenderItem to render the children directly inside our wrapper. And this will tell PageGrid to render the children like any other block, which will allow users to use the drag and resize features. But this is just an example. You don't have to use the render items function. You can also define your own markup inside the for each loop. Next, we also create a CSS file for this block, and we add a bit of padding to our group. Now we can add this group template to our PageGrid field. And when we visit one of our PageGrid pages, we see that it worked. And now you are able to add children to your group. And you can vertically sort the children of your group, as well as sorting the groups themselves. Let's do one more example. This time we want our group to be a grid, and we want new items to be positioned automatically on the grid. And when we go back to the admin and reload the page, we see that our group now is displayed as a grid. And when we add new items to the group, the items are positioned automatically on the grid. This setup now allows us to sort the groups vertically and sort the items inside the groups horizontally inside the grid. For more code examples and step-by-step guides, I recommend checking out the PageGrid developer documentation. Thanks for watching and have fun developing.